role does threshold training or speed work and, recovery play in your training program, and there's specific protocols that you implement? I know, for instance, we've talked a little bit on the show about like cryotherapy or ice baths as a good way to reduce inflammation. Um, what techniques have you used, and how do you recover after a big Sunday distance run?
For a while there, I was doing ice baths on Sundays. Sunday afternoons, my old gym that I was at had ice baths, which you could use. And I was doing it with a mate. And I think ice is probably one of those things that, um, some people love it and some people don't. I think it's a bit of a personal preference type thing. I sort of really enjoyed it and felt like I got the benefit from it, whether that was placebo or not.
Yeah.
Who knows? And then other than that, it's sort of, I mean, yeah, sleep. You sort of can't give enough credit to how much of a role sleep plays in recovering from that sort of stuff. Particularly, if you've got the luxury to be able to have a nap on a Sunday after a long run, or making sure you're getting your 8 to 10 hours a night. So I think that plays a massive role. Outside of that, I don't really do too much. Lucky enough to have a pair of recovery boots, which again, jury's sort of still out on the science and if they work. But I mean, if you strip it all back, it forces you to sit down for half an hour and do nothing. So, even if that's the benefit, that's pretty good.
Yeah, we talked about that. I talked to one gentleman who ran from Perth to Sydney, and early in the podcast, Troy, and he was talking about how he used the Normatec boots throughout his journey, and if it's a placebo effect and he feels like it's helping him, well, that's enough to kind of assist him. And as you say, like just that time to sit down and recover. Oftentimes when I'm using the Normatec boots, I use that time to do some mindfulness as well. So I guess there's other strategies that it forces you to sit there and focus on your breathing, and maybe potentially do some other forms of recovery work, like using a Theragun or whatever it may be. Something that,
Yeah.
as you say, the jury's still out, but these techniques, if there is a placebo effect, I imagine there's some usefulness or proxy for those in training and in theory. So on that topic of mindfulness, how do you mentally prepare for these long distance events? I think, as you talked about at the start, it's nice when you're quite naive coming into your first event and you really don't know what's ahead of you and it's all unknown. And oftentimes that's the adrenaline kind of gets you through. But now that you're an experienced runner, you understand what it takes physically and mentally to endure these events. How do you prepare yourself mentally? What techniques do you use? And how can others listening maybe integrate this into their own training?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think when I sort of didn't finish that marathon in the Gold Coast, I think a lot of that there was a few factors, but I think I was definitely in my head a bit too much about that. Found myself on the morning of trying to find mindfulness podcasts, and that's never done that before. So I think there's a red flag in itself. So there's probably not techniques that I use that I stick to 100%. I think it's a bit of a cliche, but the whole trust in the training is super beneficial, and just looking back on the work you've done in the leader is super beneficial, and just having and trusting the process that you've gone through. Outside of that, there's not too many specific techniques that I use. I think leading up and during the race, it's always super beneficial for me to break the race down into portions. Usually break it down into sort of 5K blocks and know what time you need to hit for that 5K to hit your goal time. So then at any given time, just making sure you're focusing on just that 5K. not the next one, not the one after that, or not, you know, K40. You're just focusing on that 5K and hitting that split. And then, you know, once that rolls over, it's like, all right, back to zero. Just focus on this 5K. That's been really, really beneficial for me in terms of breaking the race up and not getting too far ahead of myself. And then, yeah, I think sort of riding the waves is another thing that I keep in mind. Like, you're never going to feel, oh, some people might, if you have a really good race, but you're never going to feel incredible or 100%, you know, every kilometer of a marathon. And I think it's just having awareness in how your body's feeling and how your mind's feeling, that there's going to be good and bad patches. You know, you might feel amazing right now, and doesn't mean you need to step on the gas because you think you're running too slow because you're feeling too good. And then on the contrary, there's times when you're going to feel, you know, like rubbish, but the chances are that's just you're going through a rough patch and that's going to pass. So I think reminding yourself that there's going to be ebbs and flows, there's going to be good and bad. And you sort of just got to ride the waves and just take them as they are. And not, you know, if you are going through a rough patch, not throwing in the towel. You know, you might have dropped, you know, 10 seconds per K for the last few Ks. It's super important to remain positive and knowing that bad patch will pass, and you'll probably, you know, start feeling good again, you know, in 15 minutes. And it's really important not to just, you know, throw in the towel then and get too caught up in those feelings and how you're feeling.